Hi, it's Alana from botany class, the one sitting right over there. I am here with Ganodermasugi, some of my favorite fungi, and we're going to talk about plant circadian rhythms. But mushrooms aren't plants, so we gotta go find some. So before we jump into plants, let's look at the world of circadian rhythms, because actually most living organisms on Earth do have a circadian rhythm, and whether you respect it or not, it is part of our natural occurring lives. Circadian rhythms are typically observed in 24-hour time blocks, and this has a lot to do with the sun. What we're really looking at is how much night exposure a plant or organism has, as the amount of night exposure the organism is experiencing directly affects its ability to experience sun. The other major input we're looking at is temperature, which is most commonly correlated with the sun exposure, but with climate crisis and everything going on, sometimes does play its own input role. I really liked this study that was published by the Institute of Botany at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. I thought this chart really exhibited the cycle in a way that was digestible. As we can see, the temperature and light coming in, other factors such as humidity and nutrients are acknowledged. These are often referred to as oscillator inputs, and the circadian oscillator is what we're looking at in the center of the chart. It's also called the circadian clock sometimes. And what happens is the circadian clock will create oscillator outputs, and those will ultimately trigger gene expression. So in previous units, we've looked at gene expression as they've affected plant development and growth. In this case, we're looking at gene expression that changes throughout the day, which I found extremely interesting. The expression is powered by transcription translation feedback loops of different genes producing proteins, and those proteins leading to other genes to express different characteristics. This chart, produced by Anthony Dodd, goes into a day in the life of a plant, and you can see that at the beginning of the day, the starch reserves are depleted. That is the food source that the plant will spend the rest of the day trying to replenish. The stomatopores open early in the morning, and that's when the leaf is able to turn itself upright. By noon, the plant is in full photosynthesis, and starch is accumulating, and then the nighttime occurs. Let's tune back in with some news live from New York, where we found some plants. Hi there, Alana here again. And now you can tell it's about 7 p.m. here in New York. The season is spring, so our plants are getting ready to go into their nighttime cycle. During this time period, the stomatopores on the leaves are starting to close, and the plant is getting ready to grow throughout the night. What it's done throughout the day is collect food and photosynthesize that food into starches. Those starches will now be consumed by the plant throughout the night in order to enable growth. As the plant grows, it will get ready for the next day. So after the nighttime cycle, the plant will see the sun rise and it will detect it. I have some notes here about detection. Phytochrome is a pigment within the plant leaves. So the next day, the phytochrome will detect sunlight, and at that point, signal to the plant that it is time to begin that next cycle of collecting nutrients using photosynthesis. So now we're detecting either temperature shift or sunlight shift, and this is triggering an oscillation input response that is then bringing all of those signals to this oscillation circadian, otherwise known as the circadian clock, and it is outputting gene expression. So the circadian rhythm signals to the plant which genes to express, and then those genes are triggering different proteins to be released, and those signals are then bringing it to the different cycles of that circadian rhythm. So now that we have a background on what the circadian rhythm is and how it works, let's talk about the impact of the rhythm. So we know that it controls the triggering of photosynthesis, as mentioned previously, but because it's able to detect the temperature and amount of light coming in, the rhythm can also account for what season it is. This is important for looking at flowering times, germination of seeds, elongation of leaves, and when to use that energy. It also helps with the unfolding and folding of leaves during photosynthesis, and this is an optimizing factor when trying to get the most sun as possible. I just found these flowers in the park and thought they were really beautiful. You can see them. Thought you guys would appreciate. So not only does the circadian rhythm help guide the respiration cycle and nutrient cycle of the plant, but it also determines when it should flower based on its ability to detect the season. So the more sunlight that appears, the more close it is to summer, and as the sun starts to decrease, it detects that it's the fall and winter. Overall, it has been found through scientific research that intact circadian rhythms lead to plants having increased levels of chlorophyll, higher qualities of carbon fixation, and experience a more rapid growth rate and are more likely to survive under stressful situations and environments. This ultimately opens a lot of doors when examining factors with the climate crisis and with our own gardens and germination periods of plants. But I think most of all, it's made me rethink my own circadian rhythm and how I approach life and what impact that has on my health and growth, as well as my plants.